Romans chapter 1 verse 20. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible quality, His eternal power, and His divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people will have no excuse. 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 17. Now to the King eternal, immortal, invisible, the only God, be honor, glory forever and ever. Amen. Jeremiah chapter 10 verse 12 to 13. But God made the earth by His power. He founded the world by His wisdom, and stretched out the heavens by His understanding. When He thunders, the waters in the heavens shall roar. He makes the clouds rise from the ends of the earth. He sends lightning with the rains and brings out the wind from His storehouses. Deuteronomy chapter 33 verse 26 to 29. There is no one like the God of Jerusalem, He who rides the heavens to help you, and the clouds in His majesty. The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath His everlasting arms, He will drive out your enemies before you, saying, destroy them. So Israel will live in safety. Jacob will dwell secure in a land of grain and new wine, where the heavens dropped the dew. Blessed are you, Israel. Who is like you, a people saved by the Lord? He is your shield and helper, and your glorious word. Your enemies will cower before you, and you will tread on them on the heights. Psalms chapter 18 verse 6 to 19. In my distress I called to the Lord. I cried to the God for help. From His temple He heard me. My cry came into His ear. The earth trembled and quaked. The fountains of the mountains shook. They trembled because He was angry. Smoke rose from His nostril. Consuming fire came from His mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under His feet. He mounted the cherubims and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness His covering, and His canopy around Him. The dark rains cloud of the sky. Out of the brightness of His presence, clouds are vanished. With the hailstones and the bolts of lightning, the Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot His arrow and scattered the enemy. With great bolts of lightning He routed them. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth laid bare at your rebuke. Lord, at the blast of your breath from your nostrils, He reached out from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of the deep waters. He rescued me from the powers of the enemy, from my foes, who were too strong for me. They confronted me in the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because He delighted in me. Psalms chapter 77 verse 13 to 20. Your ways, O God, are holy. What God is as great as our God? You are the God who performs miracles. to display your power among the people. With your mighty arm, you redeemed your people, the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. The waters saw you and risen. The very depths were confounded. The clouds poured down the waters. The heavens resounded with thunder. Your arrows flashed back and forth. Your thunder was heard in the whirlwind. Your lightning lit up the world. The earth trembled and quaked. The path led through the sea, the way through the mighty waters. Though your footprints were not seen, you led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Psalms chapter 96, verse 9 to 13. Worship the Lord in the splendor of His holiness. Tremble before Him, all the earth. Say among the nations, the Lord reigns. The world is fitly established. It cannot be moved. He will judge the peoples with equity. Let the heavens rejoice. Let the earth be glad. Let the seas resound, all that is in it. Let the fields be jubilant, and everything in them. Let all the trees of the forest sing for joy. Let all creation rejoice before the Lord. For He comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness, and the peoples in faithfulness. Psalms chapter 99, verse 1. The Lord reigns. Let the people tremble. He sits enthroned before the cherubim. Let the earth shake. Psalms chapter 104, verse 31 to 32. May the glory of the Lord endure forever. May the Lord rejoice in His word. He who looks at the earth and it trembles. He who touches the mountains and the smoke. Psalms chapter 114, verse 7 to 8. Tremble, earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the God of Jacob, who turns the rock into a pool, the hard rock into springs of water. Joel chapter 2, verse 11. The Lord thunders at the head of His army. His forces are beyond number, and mighty is the army that obeys His command. The day of the Lord is great. It is dreadful. Who can endure it? Nahum chapter 1, verse 1 to 7. The Lord is a jealous and avenging God. The Lord takes vengeance and is filled with wrath. The Lord takes vengeance on His foes and vents His wrath against His enemies. The Lord is slow to anger, but great in power. The Lord will not leave the guilty unpunished. His way is in the whirlwind, and in the storm, and in the clouds, are in the dust of His feet. He rebukes the sea, and it dries up. He makes all the rivers run dry. Bashan and Carmel wither, and the blossoms of Lebanon fade. The mountains quake before Him, and the hills melt away. The earth trembles at His presence, the world and all who live in it. Who can stand His anger? Who can endure His fierce anger? His wrath is for